I should say this. My three older brothers, they left behind like a sports legacy for me to follow. Like the high school coaches already knew my name before I was coming in, and my older brother was very popular, did the whole homecoming, all that BS. And for me, for any other kid, that would have been like very exciting. But for me, I was like, oh shit. I don't know if I can curse, but I'm cursing. I was like, oh shit, because it just meant I was thrust into this spotlight whilst trying to hide my sexuality even more. So I became an absolute cliche. I was football captain. I was homecoming court, trying to date whatever girl, all hiding who I really was, and in the shadows, in love with this other young man who was the only one who really knew how I felt. So like he really became my world, but in the mask that I would put out in the world, alcohol gave that mask purpose.
Welcome to the 1000 Days Sober podcast. I am, of course, your host, Lee Davy. I am not an alcoholic. I refuse to be anonymous. I am someone who lives a self-led life, alcohol-free as fuck, and I spend every waking moment of that life helping other people do the same, like right now. How do you rebuild your faith when your religion tells you that the very thing that you are is a sin? How do you love yourself when every message you grew up with taught you nothing but shame? Well, today's guest, Sean Hemeon, knows that journey intimately because Sean grew up as a devout Mormon. He came of age as a gay man in a church that condemned him, and he found temporary relief in alcohol and drugs before finally finding lasting freedom. He has since become an actor, writer, artist, abstract painter, known for his exploration of the intersections of identity, spirituality, and recovery. And his new upcoming book dives deep into that healing journey. But what do we talk about today? Well, we talk about growing up gay in the Mormon Church, what that did to his sense of self. We talk about religion, shame, and how that and the search for love fed into his addiction. How the role of spirituality plays in his life today, how alcohol gave him relief and how sobriety gave him peace. What is it like when you're a sober actor in Hollywood? Interesting one. And why creativity without substances is the truest form of self-expression. So in this conversation about faith, identity, and freedom, it's about finding a sense of belonging, not in the church, the bottle, or in the crowd, but as always, in yourself, okay? If you want to get in touch with this beautiful man and to ask him more about his journey or to tell him about yours, email him at hemionauthor@gmail.com. If you want to find out about his work, www.seanhemeon.com. So without further ado, I'll shut the hell up and leave you in the capable hands of the beautiful, the charming, the incredibly inspirational Sean Hemeon. Sean, nice to meet you. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, mate. Just you're my last thing of the day before I chill out and be a dad, husband. Yeah.
I don't even know what part of the world you are.
I am in Cardiff in Wales in the UK. You're in LA, right?
I'm in Los Angeles. Yeah.
Yeah. I just come back from Los Angeles, actually.
Oh, okay. All right. You enjoy your time?
I did. I was just saying to my wife as we was walking around glorious Wales with our umbrellas, getting absolutely drenched, that I do miss the LA weather. Like it was absolutely gorgeous when I was there recently. Yeah. So my wife's from LA, so we're there quite a lot.
Okay. So you're familiar with all things LA.
Sort of. I'm getting there. Sean, so just reading up about you, so many fascinating things. I don't know where to start, but what was it like growing up Mormon? I have absolutely no idea what that would be like. But when I read about everything that you've become and what you've done, somehow it just doesn't seem to jive with growing up Mormon.
That's exactly right. I mean, oh my gosh, there's so many ways to answer that because I mean, being a gay Mormon is one thing, but just being a Mormon in and of itself is already a lot, I don't even know. Well,
let me help you. Let me help you
yeah.
start with that. Let me help you start with that. How important has God been in your life, and is God still an important feature in your life? How has your relationship with God evolved, and how does that tie in with being Mormon? Let's start there.
Oh, okay, great. That's a good thread. Well, okay, so yeah. So growing up, it was God was very important. It is the weirdest experience to know today what that feels like to be like conservative Christian. Like I know the feeling of fearing demons and hell and scary things in the dark and very black and white thinking. Like I can recall that feeling, but now being completely on the other side of that, it's wild. It like to understand what the other side, how they have that worldview. And my depth of belief in God was comparable to how much devotion I had for my mother, because my mother was the devout Mormon. My father wasn't as much. And so, in order to really win her over my 6 other siblings, I was the best little son in the world. I was the best little boy. I was the best little Mormon for my mother. So I really tried hard to believe, even though my mind was like, I'd be like, so why can't we see the golden plates? You've heard of the golden plates, right? The Joseph Smith. Okay. Oh, what? This is crash course. A young boy in the 1820s in America frontier found golden plates and said they were, from an angel about the ancient lost tribe of Israel, the 13th tribe of Israel. Anyway, it was the founding of the Mormon religion. And, it was all a fraud, but, so my little 8-year-old brain was always like, why can't we see these things now? And they would always just blame me. Like, I need to pray harder. And maybe one day I'll be righteous enough to see these golden plates. And so my relationship with God was like equated to my relationship with my mother at that point. And when I started realizing, around 13, that my sexuality was completely against that, then I started panicking. And I believed that I must have done something so horrific to God that he wouldn't even tell me what it was. Instead, he was just punishing me with this, cursing me with this disease of gayness. And this is what I thought when I was 13. Knowing that I was somehow choosing this thing, but also at the same time, the power of not choosing this thing was taken away from me. So I was weak. It was my fault. I was cursed. I did something like all this shit. I mean, come on, shame, 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 shame. And that, and we can get into this later, that obviously sets me up perfectly for all the alcohol and other drug use and stuff like that. But when I got to recovery, I had so much resentment for the Christian faith, for whatever I thought God was, for any of that like I couldn't say or think of the name Jesus without wanting to like punch a wall or like spit. Like I was just like I was so put off, because I at that moment too, and this is 20 years ago when I got sober, I believed the Mormons took my mother away from me. So I was blaming the Mormons for my mother's behavior and stuff. And that peaked in 2008 when in California we had something called Prop 8, which was amendment for gay marriage. And it seemed, exciting that we were going to get this, homosexual relationships were going to get allowed to marry. But then it was really bittersweet because in 2008, Obama was, elected president, but at the same time, California voted no on Prop 8, and it was so devastating. Well, even more devastating was my mother and my brother being like, well, of course we wouldn't vote for that, meaning they were against me having gay marriage. And so that led to a whole rage and protests and marches and towards the Mormon Church because they funded it. And I did 12 steps. I've done 12 steps, which obviously you and your listeners are very familiar with. And, I've expanded since then, but that's founded on some level of spirituality. You need something. You need something other than yourself. It can be, as they say, the other people in the rooms, or it can be anybody outside yourself that can help you, essentially. It's almost like a higher power. And from that forged a deeper, broader experience and view of what it means to be human on this planet. I went from like, yeah, the universe. I can believe in the universe. I could look up at the stars and be like, yeah, this is all too intricate. The fact that we're like a spinning rock in space, everything seems so perfectly balanced. Like we are like one step away from some disaster blowing up the entire galaxy and universe. Like there's something here. There has to be. So I went from that, like I can believe that, to I've evolved so much now where, opening up my mind, meditating, searching what other parts of the world believe, especially when you get into meditation. It just, obviously you get really into Eastern and just, what is this? Oh, this is great. What do other, and I found there was a spiritual master in the last century named Meher Baba, and he's the don't worry, be happy guy. Everybody's heard that. But funnily enough, he didn't say that because he was silent. He was silent for 44 years, something like that. And he was just a perfect example of what it means to be human. And he was silent because he was like, there's nothing left to be said, guys. Everything that's important that has been said has been said. So I subscribe to his teachings, which are very universal. Everything, if you ever read anything of his, you're like, oh, we've heard all of this. It was just nice having that in a person practicing that, doing that. It was like, okay, and so everything is made from love. Everything is for love. And constantly, and this is like a tenet of the 12 steps, constantly trying to turn over that worry and believing in a benevolent universe, that everything has a purpose. And because of that, I have come to a place of being grateful for my addictions, my alcoholism. Because to me now, where I am, it got me to this place faster. It had a purpose. It was like, oh, yes, that was the purpose. It was to bring my ego to its knees as quickly as possible to get to, well, now I'm of greater service to myself, to the world around me. And so spirituality, belief in God is so intimate, and to me today, intimate and from love. And you guys, I love who I am today just because of that. That's the big answer. Some of that will weave back in, I'm sure, as we keep talking. But that's we started at the top, you guys. You went for the big question.
I appreciate it. How do you make sense of being gay inside of that world, and what was it like? I mean, I'm not gay, but when I was young, learning that I was half Chinese when everybody else was white was a bit of a mind fuck to me at 8 years of age. That's nothing compared to being brought up in a culture and a community which actually is heterosexual, right? It's like, it's a sin. Otherwise, we're okay with it, but you can't bring it into the community type of thing. And so how did you deal with that?
Yeah, well, I didn't, obviously, but the Mormons only later, like in the 2000s, sort of said, like, you can say you're that, but we don't really believe in that. So in the 90s, it's almost like my parents were two symbols of two things. My mother being the symbol of the Mormons, who, I was going to hell. I was choosing to have these sinful thoughts. It was my failing, and these sins were going to take me to hell. It was a cancer, is what they thought homosexuality was. It was equal to, murder. It was the worst of the worst. And for the Mormons, especially out of all the Christian faiths, it's so the Mormon faith is so centered around family. It is so centered around patriarchy and the family unit that like the homosexuality was just staunchly they felt like it was so against that. So homosexuality, especially in the Mormon faith, was really like attacked and demented, and I mean, hence the 2008 thing. I had that, and then I had my father, who not Mormon, which was highly unusual. My mother, that's a whole other story how she ended up with him, but she later went to Al-Anon. Maybe that says enough about that. You know, he had his own drinking thing. This is where she has her own trauma history. He has his own. They ended up together. But he was just, old fashioned in that way, meaning gay equals feminine equals weak. And so it was the idea of masculinity. So me coming of age in the 90s played like a central part. So it was the time period, it was the idea of masculinity, and then it was, well, worst of all, which was, God hates me. God must hate me. Because that was the only, I was okay until I was, puberty was hitting. That changed everything. And so what could a 13-year-old's brain, how could I process that? Obviously I couldn't, but like, what am I making of this fact that I've been told, this inclination, these thoughts about these other boys or were bad, and that I should be able to control them, and yet I feel constant failings of that. Also, at that time was the beginning of the internet. Early 90s was, in the States we had America Online, 93, 94, and so by 14 or 15 I was using it as an outlet for, they had the chat rooms, and so they had the M for M chat rooms, and I was 14, probably thinking I'm talking to some 15-year-old in Cardiff or in Australia or whatever, but it's probably some 40-year-old man now that I think about it. But it was an outlet for me to be like listening to other people who were like me and who had no problem being that way. So it kind of blew my mind. But no, I'd feel such guilt and shame. No 13-year-old should fantasize daily about walking into traffic. I mean, that's just sad. It wasn't that I wanted suicide. It was that like I hoped for an accident. Like I needed an outlet. And I don't know if this is ironic or if this is just the way things was. I found relief in two ways. One, that other young man over there who became my best friend, I realized felt like I did. And so and we had this undercover relationship all through high school. And because the love was so pure, because you're teenagers, it felt so from my heart. It boggled my brain, because it was like, how could something feel so right be so wrong? I mean, I fell madly in love with them. That was one. So that truly saved my life. Two was having alcohol for my first time. And you guys, that saved my life. I mean, at that young age when, I have 3 older brothers, there's 7 of us. And so the eldest brother got that brother drunk for the first time. That brother got that brother drunk for the first time. And that brother got me drunk for the first time. And, the first time was like 2 beers when I was like 14. But the relief, oh my God, the profound relief. I could absolutely see why I was like, what is this? And how do I have more of this? Because the torment, the existential torment, the constant shame, the constant guilt, like it was, I was having migraines every other week. I was checked for ulcers. I mean, this is how bad it was for me I'm a tall man. I'm 6'4". I was tall in middle school, so the doctors chalked it up for that, but none of them, not a single one asked how I was emotionally. And if they did, I probably wouldn't have been able to articulate like, oh, I want to die on a daily basis, So yes, of course, I romanticized alcohol from then on, because it saved my life. I wanted to die a little less. And so, of course, I grabbed onto it for dear life. Of course, I grabbed onto this other young man, best friend of mine, for dear life, because that love that grew was profound, but hiding that also, and the shame of that also, I would use through high school. I mean, I was blacking out well before I even graduated high school, was the glue that sort of kept this mess together.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. It's like when I was worried about being called a chink,
Ah,
at least I could go home to my mum and dad, like
ah,
listening to you, it's like you lose God, you lose your mom, you lose your dad. I don't know about your siblings, but I bet some of those didn't take it too well. And then school, you kind of hide into, you really are alone. So,
yep, yep.
interesting what you said about the alcohol. How did alcohol what was it that it gave you or allowed you to do, or how to experience life in a different way? You say it saved your life. What was it about alcohol that was transformative for you in those early years?
Yeah. Well, I'd say a few ways. I mean, the most important way, which I've already said, was it relieved me of the burden of life. Like, it relieved while I was intoxicated. Like, I did not feel that level. Um, this is all, by the way, this is also the beginning of drinking. Later on, it all, came back in spades when I would be drunk, but it really, it brought back the effervescence of life, just like it relieved me of, feeling guilt and shame just for that time period. It was a relief valve, and that was, great. I mean, that was like, this is awesome. What is this thing? And it also gave me, a purpose. It gave me, a guidepost, because I became very cool, you know. Well, I should say this. My three older brothers, uh, kind of, they left behind like a sports legacy for me to follow. Like, the high school coaches already knew my name before I was coming in, and my older brother was very popular, did the whole homecoming, all that BS. And for me, for any other kid, that would have been like very exciting. But for me, I was like, oh shit. Sorry, I don't know if I can curse, but I'm cursing. I was like, oh shit, because it just meant I was thrust into this spotlight whilst trying to hide my sexuality even more. So I became an absolute cliche. I was football, captain. I was homecoming court, trying to date whatever girl, all hiding who I really was, and, in the shadows, in love with this other young man who was the only one who really knew how I felt. So, like, he really became my world. But in the mask that I would put out in the world, alcohol gave that mask purpose. I was cool because I had access to alcohol via my brothers or their friends, or I had a fake ID. So I was very cool in that regard. I was the party animal. I was the guy that can put down a lot of alcohol. I was fun to be around, for that reason. I partied. You wanted to be with me. I was definitely not the person. Well, parents loved me and trusted their kids with me, but you definitely didn't want your kid with me because of the peer pressure. I needed to feel better about my use, so I needed you to keep up with me, that kind of thing. But alcohol became an identity. It became, as much as an identity it can become for a teenager. I mean, I realize what I'm saying. Um, it didn't. It became a source of identity. I don't think quite yet that my life revolved around it. Meaning, obviously, I'm not 21, and everything isn't geared towards getting to the bar yet. But everything was geared towards, like, what are we? How are we staying drunk through the weekend? Because we have school during the week. Although by senior year in high school, I was for sure, by the last few months of high school. I was definitely starting to drink during school. Not all the time, but
Yeah, we in Wales where I live in the valleys, it's very polarized. You're either when you're in school, well, it was for me anyway when I was in school in the 80s and 90s. You were either cool or you wasn't. That was very polarized. And if you were cool, your identity was alcohol, drugs, and sex at a young age. It's just what
yeah,
it was.
yeah,
If
yeah,
you didn't drink, you just wasn't cool.
right.
So I remember the first time I call it being alcohol free as fuck. I don't really use the word sober as such. So I remember being
Love that.
alcohol. I was alcohol free as fuck, and I walked into a rugby club. So rugby is like huge down here in South Wales, and we had a poker tournament. So I go into a rugby club. There's no women allowed in there. There's all men in there, big fucking rugby men, right? So I'm in there, and everyone's like, they used to call me Ching back then. Ching, are you going in around? Are you drinking with us? I'm not drinking. And
Oh my God.
I remember telling them I was never going to drink again. And you wouldn't believe what happened. How many people, big ass, strong men, said to me that they wished they had the balls to do the same thing because they liked it, but they were starting to also not like it, but they could not see life without it, right?
Yep. Yep.
And that's identity, right? Like when
Yep.
people talk about alcoholics and the rock bottom and drinking out of bottles, pissing yourself on a park bench. Here were guys we would say were normal, and they couldn't see life without it. To me, that's the crime. That's the focus.
Yep.
Yeah, I used to call it the invisible alcoholic. That's what I used to call it. I don't call it that anymore, but I used to call it the invisible alcoholic. So it's like crazy. What was? Oh, sorry. Go on.
Well, I was just going to say the best part about, to use your term, getting free as fuck, is to start the journey. You actually don't have to envision yourself. You can have disbelief. You can start this journey and be like, I could never imagine a life without it. That's okay. You just start the journey, and that belief will come later. Because I was the same. I could never imagine without drugs or alcohol. Like it just didn't compute. Like no images came to my mind, but I knew enough to like, okay, but if I do put my head down one day at a time, as everyone says, I don't have to believe that, but I can just trust what these people over here are telling me. Then, we'll see what happens. One day I'll look up and I'll be like, how did I just get a year? Wait, what? Like you don't have to believe it to start. It's all.
Isn't it incredible though, right? Isn't it incredible that you and me and I would say billions of people on this planet, not millions, billions of people on this planet could not fathom or even consider a life without a drug that kills 3.3 million people a year, which is more than war, murder, and terrorism combined. And they couldn't even fathom it. It blows my mind. Yes. It absolutely blows my mind. Honestly, I remember when I first realized that, like, because obviously everybody gives up for different reasons, right? Like, they use different techniques. The technique that I used was I just really analyzed, why do I drink? So, like, I'm 35. I asked myself for the first time, why do I drink? And I made this list of all the things why I drink. And then I really scrutinized them, and I realized it was all lies. Like I thought alcohol gave me this. Like, let's say it makes me less anxious, gives me courage, makes me great in bed, all this kind of shit. And I looked at it and I was like, actually, the reverse is true. So it's like once I realized that this thing is giving me nothing, and I just stopped. I was just like, why can't anybody else see this? I thought I was going mad.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I thought like a life without alcohol is so much better than a life with it. Yeah, I could do everything that I was doing when I was drinking, but better.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to do this. Like I just couldn't.
Well, I mean, all those things that you thought it was giving you, it probably gave you those things the first many times that you did drink. Like it gave you the liquid courage, as we say. It gave you like I think people still are chasing those first experiences. Like when I had that first experience at 14, like mind-boggling, like I don't feel shame or guilt. The rest of my drinking is just chasing that first time. It's just trying to, and your tolerance builds, so you do more, and then maybe you have a moment of that fleeting freedom, if you will, of existential angst that I was having. But then then you need to drink more, and then and then what is it? What is the phrase? It's like, it's very common. It's like first there's drinking, and then there's drinking with problems, and then there's problems with consequence. What is it? How does it go? It's like
I haven't heard that one, but I'm definitely with you on the heart. You just brought up a memory of mine. Actually, it's like back when I was moving, like, how was I? I was in my 20s, and I started to do a lot of speed. And I remember, I remember being in a pub
because it helped you drink more. Because it helped you drink more, right?
Actually, mine was really weird. I started taking speed when I was drinking, and then I realized that the two, just for me, I just didn't. There was no point. Like, it's almost like drinking was spoiling my speed high. So I would, and then I realized I was paying back then £10 for a gram of speed, which was like maybe $13-14. And then I was like, hang on, I can spend £10 on a gram of speed and just be fucking nuts, or I can spend 50 quid on alcohol and puke in it. So I started to take speed, and I was in a pub one day, and my mate came on to me and he said, do you have any speed? And I said, I've only got a gram and I want to take it myself. And he pulls out this little bottle of liquid, and it was amyl nitrate.
Yeah, of course.
And he said, give me some speed and I'll give you a sniff of this. Now, I always grew up, you never sniff anything, right? But right in front of me in a pub, he went, what, one nostril, up the other nostril, and he just started laughing. And I thought, well, he's not dead. So I said, give it here. Oh, so I did exactly the same as him. Oh, my honest to God, Sean, my legs went like jelly. I held onto the bar. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I managed to get to the toilet, and I was just like, give it here. And I never, ever had the same experience ever. He gave me the bottle, and I used it for many years afterwards. I never had the same feeling that I had that one moment.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, we're chasing the high. We're chasing the exactly right. Yeah, the gay boys call those poppers, and like they use them.
Yeah,
all the
they're supposed. Are they supposed to like relax their bum muscles or something?
Absolutely, yes. They're heavy. They're heavy. Yeah, and there's debate in any recovery community about like, are they sober or are they not sober? Like, and that's for everybody's discretion. But to your point though of chasing. Nothing is ever like that first experience. The first time I did cocaine, the first time I did meth, the first time I did ecstasy. I mean, name the drug. Nothing is like that first time. And
look at us, Sean. Sean, we need to let's just stop a second. We need to have people think they're on the wrong podcast.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Let's wheel it back.
This conversation with Sean is all about being different. And maybe you're listening to this and you're feeling that you're very different as well, and that you don't feel safe actually expressing who you truly are to the people that you love in your life. Maybe you're afraid of being seen, being heard, or feeling like you don't matter. And there's a lot of shame around that, right? It may be that you need some coaching. So if that is true and you feel safe in my capable hands and guidance, then email me at thestrivemethod@gmail.com, or you can send me a WhatsApp message at +44 753 789 6829. That's +44 753 789 6829. Now back to Sean Hemeon. They're probably listening thinking, well, these guys love getting high. I'm only joking. Guys, listen, if you're listening to this, you all used to get high, you all used to love it. We're just kind of like reminiscing about it. Don't get too worried about it. Just switching a little bit.
But no, the joy, the fact that we can talk about it with such distance and security it means like, okay, we are pretty secure in where we are with where our journey with those substances, like our sobriety, our free as fuck. Like the fact that we can sort of laugh about it now is a sign of recovery to me, for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's a worthy conversation as well. It's like the way that my journey went and the work that I do in the Strive method, I realized that when I stopped drinking, it wasn't enough. So I stopped drinking to try to save my first marriage. She divorced me. And then I stopped drinking. I thought I was the business. I thought I knew everything. And then my second wife, who's downstairs, she's like, I don't want to be with you anymore. Because I feel like I'm married to a boy. And I didn't compute. I'm like, yeah, but I don't drink. And then I realized I'm unconscious as hell. Like I have so much trauma, so much work I haven't done, you know. So now I really specialize in helping people live more consciously. So then that brings up then the debate, well, can you drink consciously? Can you drink unconsciously? Can you take drugs consciously? Can you take drugs unconsciously? And, you know, using amyl nitrate, for example, if me and my wife were in bed and we decided we wanted to crack out the poppers to spice up our sex life, I actually think I could make that. I haven't, and I'm not planning to, but I think I could make that conscious decision from a place of consciousness and self and exploration with my partner in intimacy and depth and say, yeah, I could do that. Safe in the knowledge that I wouldn't then all of a sudden bang out the amyl nitrate every single night because I needed to cure some hidden need of mine. Do you get me, Sean?
Absolutely. Yes. And that is particular to your sobriety journey, your journey with substances, and everybody gets to define, no matter if you're 12 steps or free as fuck or any, you know, harm reduction or, you know, there's so many different paths to finding. I just keep using sobriety just because it's a catch-all, but that you get to define what that means for you. You know, if whatever works for you for the journey that you're on is perfectly okay. There isn't necessarily, there's the one that works for you. There isn't one that's better than the other. It's whatever works for you on this journey of self-discovery is kind of what it is.
Yeah, it's really important because people listen here. They were like, "Oh, do I do AA? Do I do the Strive method? Do I do?" No, you do. You try everything, and whatever fits for you, right? Like,
yep.
I'm
Absolutely.
really interested in Hollywood. Hollywood. My wife's from Hollywood, and she's so into the Hollywood culture. She'll say, "Did you know that so and so is divorced so and so?" Like, how do I know that? But she knows everything about Hollywood. How important was alcohol in the Hollywood scene? When you first got in there, how important was it?
I early on in my, you know, recovery days, the dream of working in Hollywood was so romanticized for me, that it gave me purpose. Actually, early on, it gave me purpose to achieve sobriety. It pulled me through because this was, you know, I did acting in high school, but I mean, I was more focused on sports, but I was like, this is a lot of fun. And then when I went to college, I was like, wait, you can actually go to school for this acting thing. This is fun. I didn't quite think of Hollywood yet, but then I randomly booked a soap opera and I was like, this is easy. I should go be an actor. I didn't know anything then. And I know that I just loved, I mean, you know, the sense of validation and acceptance I got from being like a drinking party animal from my peers, like, was quadrupled being an actor and everybody, you know, validating the work I was doing. I was like, okay, so, you know, going off to Hollywood and being a celebrity, like, that's the ultimate game. Okay. All right, I see what's up here. Or so I thought, you know, and so that was very compelling to me to get sober enough from, you know, from my story. And I was grateful I never used in Los Angeles. My playground was Washington, D.C. and Northern Virginia, where I grew up. So in my first year of, you know, sobriety at an outpatient program, God bless Kevin, my outpatient counselor, he was just like, you didn't get sober just to sit around. What do you want to do? And I was like, I guess the acting thing. He's like, well, you got to go to LA. And I was like, what? Wait, what? Like, and so I hightailed it out here, but I got lucky because I met somebody through AA who was visiting. And so, like, I was grateful for the 12-step rooms at that time because when I moved there, I was like nested. I could immediately go to a meeting. I lived with somebody my first year who was in the 12 steps there. So like it gave me a sense of community, which I was very grateful for. But I was worried about like, well, when I go to these parties or like, am I going to be cool enough? Like, which is really funny because now I'm remembering that one of the first parties I went to, I was invited to. It was a big time Hollywood party, but I was invited to because my sober friend who had met the host, who was a big time producer, they discovered that they were both sober. This guy, not from AA, but they were sober and they connected over that. And so that's why he got invited and invited me and took me like under his wing at the party because the host did, this big, massive producer, because I wasn't a drinker. I was like, this is great. I should be sober. This is amazing. Look at this, So I feel very validated in my sobriety and very calmed like that. I mean, now sharing that story, it's obvious that like there is some higher spirituality taking care of me. If I want, I can attribute that meaning to that, and I like to. And so I was being taken care of for my journey where I was at, showing me another way of looking at Hollywood. Because I did think it was like an extension of high school. Like you said, like I need to be cool. So I need to keep up with the drinking, the smoking, the cocaine. But this proved I didn't. And now, cut to 15 years later, yeah, no. Hollywood has nothing to do with that part. Like,
what do you ever think? What would have happened if you would have landed there in your prime, kind of like tearaway years? I mean, is it set up for you to just drown if you're in that way inclined?
Oh, hands down, yeah. Absolutely, because you can. I would have the level of alcoholic addict inside of me. I would have absolutely been one of the stories of somebody who would show up on set like after a night pieced together by other drugs and like, oh my God, I just watched like Charlie Sheen's documentary. I would have been like, if I had his success with that level of fame and that amount of money that he did, I was like, yeah, I'd probably run like he did, that level of easily. Because my brain thought I was in control, which is insanity. Because if separate story, but if you do research me and my story, you'll discover that I was a drug dealing tweaker, narc for the federal government. Like that's where I went for the last 2 years. We don't need to get into that, but I'm just using that as a point of like where my addict and where my ego took me, the depths it took me. Well, I should say where the depth of my pain took me is what I should say.
We won't be titling this podcast "Gay Drug King."
You saw the other ones. Yeah. There's other podcasts that focus solely on that, and that's great. But I mean, honestly, this is I have to say I was so excited to come on this podcast to focus on the alcohol because I'm 20 years in, right, to this sobriety, and I'm not exposed to those heavy drugs. Of course I'm not, that's easy for me to stay away from. But I was excited because, I've been with my husband for 6 years. And prior to that, I lived with my brother for 10 years who doesn't drink. He doesn't drink. So I was insulated from being, I'd go to parties still, but not like crazy parties. And so I've been away from it. But, he has his drink, but it isn't like a lot. And his family drinks for holidays. And suddenly the last 6 years, I have been exposed to more alcohol. And again, nothing extreme. I'm saying like normal, but I'm still doing holidays with them and they'll have drinks every day. I haven't been exposed to that or anything like that in such a long time that, it really forced me to double down, especially with long-term, abstinence or sobriety. Like the reasons why I'm sober today are very different than the reasons why I got sober 20 years ago. and still trying to live a life, especially in the Western world, as a sober person, being exposed to all of these things.
What happened when, when you moved in with your husband and he's drinking? I get it. My wife drinks very rarely, but she does.
Yeah.
And family as well, when family drinks. So I'm more exposed to alcohol, actually. Yeah, I'm really fortunate. When I go to LA, Liza's family, they're very Christian, Korean. They don't drink a lot, but when they do, there is a feeling like I don't like it, right? There's a part of me that is as uncomfortable, and that's because my nervous system, um, my nervous system doesn't trust people who are drinking because they're unpredictable. So I don't know what they're doing. Here's a classic example, actually. I went for a meal in a restaurant here called Sonda, and we were by the bar. There was the only seats were by the bar. And this guy comes in and he slips a little bit and he turns around to show off because he slipped and he was quite clearly smashed, right? And I'm there with my wife. And then he comes back with his other friend and they're asking for more beers and they're both smashed. And instantly, and this is a bit of polyvagal theory here, instantly, my wife was talking to me, but I couldn't hear her because my inner ear muscles in polyvagal theory, it says when you think this threat, it quietens down the voice of people or who you're talking to, so you can hear for the threat. And my nervous system is saying these two guys are a threat, and I couldn't hear what my wife was saying. So that's why I don't like alcohol that much. But so I don't like it because of that side of things. But I never feel compelled to drink. Like I don't feel like a sense of approval or I need a drink to approve. How did anything come up for you when you was facing this problem?
Well, when I moved to LA a bazillion years ago, and I needed to get jobs, and so I would I'd work in restaurants, sure, right? So like you serve tables, sure. I having to do a table orders whatever wine of the day it is, before shift. The other servers would try whatever that wine is. And I would just be like, give me some, I'd make it up. Just tell me the tasting notes of it. And I'd be, I'd fake it at the table. I'm sure a lot of people who stopped drinking have been in the service industry have encountered this. And I was very good at selling alcohol. I'd make shit up all the time. But then I was asked to bartend and I was like, whoa, I couldn't do that. But I'll never forget, I had a peer in one of those rooms after a meeting tell me one time, he's like, he was a bartender. And I asked him, I was like, how do you do that? He's like, honestly, it's just somewhere where your brain goes. Cause it suddenly just treats it like a job. Like, he's like, it's like an oil worker in an oil field. They'll get oil on them and they'll just brush it off and keep going. And I was like, I don't know, seems risky, but he was absolutely right. And once I started bartending, it I don't know. My mind shifted that this was a job, and I had zero desire to try anything. In fact, when I would, bartend these parties and people were very nice at the beginning. And then when they got progressively drunk, I hate drunk people, hate them. And I would get progressively more of an asshole to the point where I am just a CUNT to these people. Like I was just awful and they loved it every time. And so this was like my routine. I was awful to these. I was so annoyed with them. They were so but they loved it. And so this was the thing I was in for a while. That was different. So that was like, okay, I'm exposed to alcohol. Great, whatever. I hate it even more now. I hate drunks even more now. That's its own thing. But then and I'm in work mode, but when I'm relaxed, and it's a holiday and I'm just like, my guards are down. I just want to recover. And then my husband and his family are here and they're having a margarita or the glass of wine, or they're talking about the tasting notes of wine or whatever. I'm just like, that's different when my guard is down, because then I'm like, oh. And then, my brain was like, you got sober at 23. You didn't really drink a lot of wine. I wonder what is that tasting note really? That kind of thing. And then inevitably though, they don't get wasted, right? They're, again, when I say normal drinkers, I mean like they save it for the holidays and they do get a little tipsy, a little drunk. but by that time I'm just exhausted. I realize usually I'll go to bed because I realized after a couple holidays of this that I don't actually fully relax because my guard, I realize, is actually still kind of up because of those first couple thoughts of like, what does that wine taste like? Or like, man, they seem to be laughing, having a good time. But really for me being with his family, it was very, my nervous system really was like, this is a lot, you know? I became curious about I didn't want to drink, but like I was having new thoughts and that's what freaked me out. And so my guard would be up and just sort of like, I'd be exhausted by the end of the night and I would have to excuse myself because they would start annoying me. I hope my husband isn't here listening, but it's true. It's true.
I always say to, I was always lucky. I always used to say to my friends, they used to say, oh, come and watch a football or whatever. I say, guys, I'll come watch a football. But come like 7, 8 o'clock, I'm gone because that is the time you're all going to turn into a bunch of pricks. And they just like, they know, they just like, yeah, we will be like that, you know?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm thinking about you at the holidays and all your families drinking and all, and think about your past where there must have been, when you were younger, this desire to be approved of and accepted for, and be part of, like, be part of something, a tribe or something, and you're so alone. And then I imagine in these moments, that little child part of you is like, hey, is this happening again? Like, they're all drinking, I'm not. So now I'm on the outside again. And it might be like, well, you know, maybe if we were like them, then we feel. So maybe there's a part of that comes into the nervous system as well at the same time, you know?
That definitely I think plays a part, wanting to be accepted, you know, because I'm also dealing with the fact that, you know, earlier I was talking about fighting for my right to get married in 2008. I mean, I come from a generation of gay men who definitely believed that we would never have gay marriage. So it was absurd. And my husband is younger than me and doesn't quite have that same experience as I do. So the fact that I'm married to him, the fact that I am walking into he's from Texas, an entire Texas family that is very accepting of him and me was also baffling to me. So it was contending with all of that. That was just like, this isn't supposed to happen in my life, but it is. And I don't know, this is all very good stuff and I can't handle this. I can't handle this. And of course that part of me is so uncomfortable. That's the part that I really wanted to use, that really wanted to like ease the tension and just not be neurotic because I get on myself for being neurotic. And so a lot of it was breathing and just literally doing nothing. I mean, not trying to change the meaning, but just breathing through, allowing my nervous system to calibrate to the experience. That was more what it was. And yes, having that margarita with them, especially on the first holiday or two, or many times meeting them, sure, would have made me like a cool guy. And I probably was coming across as cool guy, but it would have been an easier time for me. But would I have evolved and grown and filled out as a human being on this journey if I negated the experience with an outside substance? I had enough wherewithal at that point that I knew experiences in my life, if I breathe and just allow them to happen and allow whatever feelings to happen and not try to shame them, because shame just stops growth for me. And so it just kills growth. And my way through growth was to love myself and allow myself to find a way to be okay with whatever was happening. That's my antidote to shame. I would evolve. I would, you know, extremely uncomfortable at first, but now it's very easy to be around them, which is a normal thing. But also I changed. Like I was scared of these Texas men, but now I'm like, way more secure in my sexuality than I could have ever been, way more secure in my choice to be sober than I ever have been as well. Like I dare I say, and I feel invincible. That's dangerous territory to say that I feel that, but I grew and evolved as a result of that. It sucked because I wanted the holiday to relax, but no, that's not my journey right now.
What you're describing there in the Strive method, which I use to help people become alcohol free and live more consciously. It's one of the core tenets is internal family systems. So it's identifying self and parts. What you're describing there to me is you're in self. So because you're in self, you trust that everything is right. You trust who you are. You trust that you don't care what other people think. So that you're not coming from fear, which is part, you're coming from trust, which is self. It's like, and this is a work that's really important. When I was in LA just recently, I had to go over there for a visa issue, and I was staying with my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, and they're very religious, right? And I'm not, right? Like I'm agnostic, I'd say I was. And my mum says to me, "Are you going to come to church with me?" Well, I'm like, yeah, I'll come to church because I know it's important to her, right? So I said, yeah, I'll go to church with you. So I dress up just like I am now, right, to go to church. And she looks at me and she's like, hang on a minute. And my dad's a tailor. So they start making me a suit, basically, to go to church. And I've said to her, Mum, I'm not wearing a suit to go to church. I don't care what people think about me and how I dress. And she said, what kind of man are you? Right? Because in her head, as an old Korean woman going to church, you wear a suit. Now, I love her for it. I laughed, right? I don't think anything of that. But 20, 30 years ago, when I'm living the outside in life like you were, where our entire self-worth relies on the love and the acceptance of everyone around us, that would have broke me. I would have been like, what kind of man am I? But now today, because I'm in self-energy more, like you were just talking about, it's kind of like, oh, that's really cute. Like, you know what I mean? You deal with it in a very different way because you're not coming from fear,
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the major things about being able to, like without substances, alcohol, which I used as a medication, to self-regulate, to deal with an emotional trigger that I don't know what to do with this. Let me drink it. Like, and then you get in the habit of that. Suddenly you need the thing in order to self-regulate, but then the thing creates consequences and then you feel ashamed for that. But then you need to use the thing again to deal with the shame. And there goes the cycle. So without that cycle in place, reaching for the thing, I have to sit through very, very, very uncomfortable feelings. But the more I do that, because they always pass, the more I do that, the more filled out I become, the more confident I become, and the more I learn, the more I have to learn how to self-regulate. And that's the natural evolution. If a human being was left untainted, our brains would do this, but everybody's affected for whatever reasons. But if my ability to self-regulate, to walk into any room, I can walk into any room and feel pretty darn confident. I may be, faking it slightly, but not really. Like I know I'll meet myself there. But the ability to self-regulate, to recognize when I'm triggered, to recognize how to work through that trigger is everything, I think, and makes me so that I don't have to reach for something.
100%. That's someone who I love very dearly was talking to me the other day. Their partner had left them and they were like, I'm in so much pain. I'm in so much anguish. What do I do? And it's like, I got you. And now you just feel it. You just feel it. You just experience it. And let me guide you. We're going to take some breaths. Like managing your nervous system is everything. Because if you can learn to manage your nervous system, then all those things that used to trigger you, like for example, me and my wife right now, when I came back from LA, we had a fight for a week nonstop. And we were talking about how it always happens, but we're getting a little bit better at it. And then it's almost like I'm now invading her territory, her space. The co-regulated nervous system we had before I went away is now gone. Now she has a co-regulated nervous system with my daughter. And then I come in like thinking I'm the boss again. And it's like, no, right? Like but I find when I take care of my shit, when I take care of my nervous system, I didn't when I come in from LA, then my wife softens. She's in a beautiful feminine energy. I can step into my masculine energy. And that's how we both we party, right? That's how we gel. If she's in her masculine and I'm in my masculine, we're just going to fight. right? So it's like nervous system management is so cool. I know we've only got a couple of minutes left. I really wanted to ask you this question. You are an artist in so many different ways, but one of them with your abstract art. And I'm really wanted to ask you this question: creativity with substances versus creativity without, because so many people get so hung up on, I cannot stop drinking because I will not be able to produce my art. How do you manage? I know we've only got a couple of minutes, but
no, it's okay. It's great. Well, okay. So to speak to that, again, with the substances, it relieves the critic, right? It frees a person up because the critic isn't there, and they don't think the thing they're doing is stupid, or if they do, they can quickly bat it away, and they can have the freedom to do what they want. So it feels, I can see why some would feel the need, when we do stuff like that, we learn to really not trust ourselves. We learn to really, really not trust ourselves. And, or if you're from a very religious background, like I was, you're very much taught not to trust yourself. If you have any doubts about the religion, it's your failing. You can't trust yourself. You don't have enough faith. You need to pray harder. And, as free as drugs and alcohol feel, especially again, when being creative, it just cuts your knees out. It can be fun, like experiment, sure, if you're still out there using, like that's what I'm saying. But if you become like, oh my God, I can't do this thing without this thing, it's primarily because of that. The reason I love abstract is because it is dependent upon me making mistakes. It is dependent upon me allowing whatever to occur, and then later I'll build on that and then maybe make it into something. But the first many stages are just the freedom of exploration and just letting the imagination go where it wants to go, so that there's no room for the critic. And there's so much freedom in that. And I don't know why, but they've done a lot of studies on this. They've done a lot of studies on how, especially with abstract work, just the freedom of it really speaks to the unconscious, probably gives voice to the different internal family systems, the little boys inside of me getting those emotions out. And because it's sort of like another access point of expression away from the critic, the guy trying to run the show, it's incredibly healing. Like you can get certified for trauma healing through abstract art and that sort of thing. And then and that's what it was for me for like the first 8 years. Like I was just this is for me, blah. And then eventually it evolved into something that was like people wanted to buy. And then that, that's where I ended up. But I at this point, I can't imagine being on substances, because I can't even equate I'll say this final thing. The experience for me is more than substances, because it is such a mindful, present moment act that fully connects me so searingly to the moment, therefore so searingly to the actual truth of me as a human, as a soul in this. And this is just like feeling the paint on the canvas. And technically or spiritually, you and I right now talking at this moment, later when people listen to this is different, is truly the only thing that exists. We have this moment between you and I right now. And so painting / being creative is that for me. And that doesn't even come close to the feeling of being drunk or high. It doesn't even come close to that. And the stuff the artwork that I make from that is almost secondary to that expression of my creativity, of my soul in that moment.
My friend, poet, last night, had a cup of tea with him. He was talking about the same thing. It's irrelevant. The stuff I've done, it's the process. It's when I'm in it, when I'm doing it. Actually, he said he needs a critic. He needs a critic. Without the critic, he can't Right. He doesn't drink, but he needs a critic in order for him to get his poetry right. It's a really interesting conversation.
The critic will come in later for me. Yes, but I mean, there's many stages of just freedom, and then the critic / the person who creates.
He's probably the same. He's probably the same. In the moment, he's in the flow, and then afterwards, the critic comes in.
Correct.
Yeah, Sean. Tell people how. I mean, I'm going to put it in the show notes anyway. But how can they get hold of your art? And when's your book out? Is your book out yet?
No, I'm working on the publication date with the agents and the publishers right now.
So what's the best way for people to keep tabs on you then?
Yes. You follow me on Instagram. You'll put that in the show notes at Sean Hemeon, or you can definitely go to my website, seanhemeon.com. You can sign up for my newsletter, which will just keep you up to date on all things my art, all things my book. You can check out my art on my website, seanhemeon.com. I have originals, but I also started, people really wanted me to do prints. So I started doing a lot of fine art prints on canvas, on paper. And all of that is from my personal journey, my very healing journey. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing it, because there's now in today more than ever, people are so afraid of speaking out and being who they really are because of threats on social of this, that, and the other. So you are a beacon of light. You've been through a lot and you're there talking about it. And there's so many people out there hiding some part of them that can take some solace from you and some inspiration. So thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. And anybody listening, you are not as alone as your mind is making you think you are. You are not alone. You are not alone. And if they want to reach out to me personally, I'll give you my email to put in the show notes after.
That'll be great. Awesome.